Well, I'm back for another video, and in this video, I'm going to do a little bit of commentary kind of about the state of things. But just for those of you just finding some of the new content, just a kind reminder that I do have the membership options set up on my page now. So I have 3 levels of membership that you can join. And the button should be like right over here. And if you don't see it there, you can go to the main page too. But the first level is, of course, for $4.99. You can be an enabler. For $9.99, an accessory, and for $24.99, an accomplice. So join at whatever level of complicity you feel led to join at. And if you don't, that's cool too. I'm thinking about setting up a State Department level of donorship that might be like 12 grand a month, allows full control over the direction of this channel. So, you know, just throwing that out there. I wanted to talk about kind of objectivity and truth and how dangerous those concepts are. And I know before anybody jumps in there is like, truth, objectivity, how are those things bad? Bear with me. So back in, I believe it was, let's see, this is originally dated as from April 13th of 2022. And I did a video on this way back when. But those of us with monetized channels, we all got this, this letter from Google AdSense. And it says, "Dear publisher, due to the war in Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war. Please note, we have already been enforcing on claims related to the war in Ukraine when they violated existing policies. For instance, the dangerous or derogatory content policy prohibits monetizing content that incites violence or denies tragic events. This update is meant to clarify and in some cases expand our publisher guidance as it relates to this conflict. This pause includes, but is not limited to, claims that imply victims are responsible for their own tragedy or similar instances of victim blaming, such as claims that Ukraine is committing genocide or deliberately attacking its own citizens." Now, this is why the whole idea of objectivity and truth. Sorry, there's the window to my place is over here, and I see crazy farm equipment pass sometimes. But objectivity and truth are sometimes held up as these lofty goals of you want to say the truth or you want to be objective. But those are actually really dangerous concepts. And I want to introduce a question here that's kind of a good litmus test for you as citizens, as global citizens, as we move forward, is to ask yourself, as anything is happening around you, or if you're about to do something or whatever, does it support the narrative? Because to say truth, sometimes the truth can actually cause us problems. So let me give you an example. So let's say one of your friends, you're about to go see the latest big movie, you're about to see the latest Marvel movie, and one of your friends tells you the ending. Okay, now he just spoiled the plot for you. Was he not telling you the truth? Was he lying to you? No, he wasn't. He was actually telling you the truth. Was it correct information? You bet it was. It was exactly the way the movie ends, and he just destroyed the plot. But you have to look at the reaction to that. You have to look at how that information creates ripples in the water and how it creates this reaction in the general public. And if that reaction is an adverse reaction, we really have to think about our truth and how that truth is going out there because of how destructive that could be. You know, a lot of the conspiracy people are actually the ones that started the waking somebody up, you know, referring to people basically being asleep and not knowing what was actually going on, and that they were waking them up. And that's where a lot of that woke stuff actually started, was in the conspiracy culture about people being woken up to what was actually happening in the world. But here's the problem with that. How many of you, when someone wakes you up suddenly, how many of you like that? I bet it's exactly 0 of you appreciate being woken up out of a deep sleep. Especially if you're having a nice comfortable nap, the last thing you want is somebody waking you up. So it doesn't matter the reason or the truth or whatever, you have to think about what it's doing. And in some cases, that might be such a thing as to cause us to maybe be careful about that. So again, like a special effect or a magic trick, or we're sitting there watching a movie and someone leans over to us and explains how a special effect works or a magic trick works, that really spoils it. Again, is that wrong information? Are they lying? No, they're totally 100% correct. But I didn't want to know that. I don't want that. And that's something we have to think about. Is the information, do we want it, and back to my original point of this commentary, does it support the narrative? And that's what we got to think about, is the narrative. The narrative is the high holy ground of information. And the narrative is going to weave and go all over the place, just like any good story does. And we have to think about, there are times when we don't want to be the ones giving out the spoilers. We want to be the ones that are something of the Greek chorus in this great experiment of theater and global theater. We want to be the chorus that's helping the story along. We don't want to be the one giving out the spoiler alerts, explaining how the special effects happen and all that. Those things destroy the narrative. So we have to ask ourselves, is it good for the narrative? If it's good for the narrative, it's probably a good thing. And that's where we can sit back and be very careful about the information we take in and ask ourselves, is it good for the narrative? If it's good for the narrative, it's probably good for all the people around us. But if we're going to be spoiling something, again, think if you have a surprise party, but someone tipped off the people and they know about it, again, was that truthful information? Of course it was. But did it do any good? No, it didn't. It actually did terrible things. So we really have to step back and reevaluate our ideas of truth and objectivity and think narrative. Our focus should be on the narrative. And going back to this email, just to wrap it up here, I think this is an excellent example of the pitfalls of objectivity. If you were to look at the situation in Ukraine objectively, you would come to some there's some difficult things that are going to happen because it's going to take you away from that narrative. So for instance, you might say, wait a second, who violated Minsk 1 and 2? And wait, what about the peace agreement that was torn up? Wait, what about, what aboutism? You're going to be led down this path of saying, well, wait, why is Putin/Russia the boogeyman? And right there, that's the kind of thinking that's an insidious level of thinking that starts you on a path that destroys the narrative, okay? So we got to think, is it good for the narrative? And questioning is not good for the narrative. Now, here's where we can use these powers for good. Skepticism is a powerful and wonderful tool and a great part of the human experience. But we have to make sure that skepticism is like a loaded gun. We have to point it at the proper targets, okay? So you don't want to point your skepticism at institutional authority or the voices of the narrative, the powerful, influential voices bringing us the narrative. Those are not the people that we need to be. Those are the people on our side. The narrative is our side. And we need to make sure that when we level skepticism at a target, just like a loaded gun, that we point it towards the people that are enemies of the narrative. So again, ask yourself today as you go through your day, is it good for the narrative? Do my actions support the narrative? You, this audience here, I consider you a more discerning audience than the general public. So we should consider ourselves something of the chorus, the Greek chorus in support of this narrative. And we need to make sure our actions support the narrative. So again, ask yourselves, is it good for the narrative? And make sure that we're doing all those things that we need to do. And there's times when, blah, 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 I'm not listening. We have to shut out the truth and the facts. It doesn't matter if they're right, doesn't matter if they're correct, doesn't matter if they're 100% on point. What matters is if the truth is bad for the narrative, then we really have to rethink that truth. So I just want y'all to take that and go with that and think about that, because again, I've seen a lot of wrong-headed comments in my videos where people are challenging official narratives. And that is a dangerous way to you exercise your skepticism. Make sure your skepticism is directed outward towards the appropriate targets of that. Enemies of the narrative are appropriate targets for skepticism. The narrative is to be protected from that kind of skepticism and that kind of critique. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with that, and I hope that helps embiggen your worldview and embolden you to do good things. And I hope that those of you that are serious warriors against disinformation, that you'll consider joining. Again, you can hit that join button. I hate to say it, but that does help fund some of my foolishness. So if you want to join, you're welcome to do that. If not, I'm going to keep chugging right along, fighting the good fight against the disinformation. So thanks for watching.